Now is Department of State Undersecretary for Economic Growth, Keith Krach. Keith, thanks so much for joining us. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me back. I appreciate it.
I wanted to kick off, if I may, actually, on the topic of Huawei specifically, and then maybe we'll broaden out onto the trade relations with China. Because Secretary Pompeo also said recently that the tide is turning against them. I guess perhaps there's a tiny silver lining or bronze lining in the changing tone towards China, which is that other nations are now starting to see the U.S. view a little clearer as it relates to Huawei.
By the way, you're absolutely right. You know, it boils down to one question, and that is, who do you trust? And these are the decisions that CEOs of the telco companies are making. And it's also causing governments around the world to only turn to trusted vendors. You know, governments like Japan, Australia, the Czech Republic, Poland, Sweden, Estonia, Romania, Denmark, Latvia. And just a few weeks ago, the three big telcos in Canada announced that they're going with Ericsson and Nokia. The CEO of Telefonica, Jose Lopez, said Telefonica is proud to be a 5G clean path company, which means they won't use any trusted vendors. And then you also see the largest telcos in major countries going with a Nokia or Ericsson solution as opposed to a Huawei solution, like Orange in France, Reliance in India, Telstra in Australia, NTT in Japan, and the list goes on. And I think what's happening is that the citizens of the world are waking up to China's strategy of concealment, co-option, and coercion. And that's affecting Huawei's business because everybody knows 5G is so critical in terms of carrying people's most private information, you know, intellectual property, proprietary technology.
I guess, Keith, outside of Huawei, there's sort of three widely accepted kind of global options: Samsung and Nokia and Ericsson, as you've mentioned. Is it disappointing there's not a U.S. option?
Well, you know, for a guy who has been a global CEO in Silicon Valley for the last 30 years, it's really the first major paradigm shift that Silicon Valley has missed. So I'd be kidding you if I didn't say it wasn't a disappointment. However, we're working with so many different Silicon Valley companies and companies around the world on that next generation. So I think over the next few years, you're going to see some amazing developments in this area. And it's absolutely critical because 5G, by orders of magnitude, increase the speeds and reliability for things like autonomous vehicles and IoT, those type of things.
Yeah. Keith, I'm curious. I mean, China passed its national security law regarding Hong Kong overnight. The U.S. is already revoking that special trade status for the island, including just today, I think, barring arms exports, which I guess based on dollar amounts is more symbolic than anything. But how does that process play out? And we are talking about something like the race in 5G or the prospective decoupling of tech between the two countries. What does that mean?
By the way, I think it boils down to, again, the word trust. I mean, they broke the agreement with the UK. And when you couple that with the pandemic, and it's back to the three-pronged strategy of concealment, co-option, and coercion. The pandemic is a result of the concealment of the virus. Citizens all over the world are waking up and seeing that their supply chains for things like pharmaceuticals are entangled and desperately dependent on China for that. And then also what we see is China's so-called face mask diplomacy is a tool of seduction and coercion to get leverage from their medical supplies of things that they want. So I think Hong Kong is one more proof point on that. You see the skirmishes at the Indian border. And it's really given the political will to government leaders and to corporate CEOs to stand up to that China bully, because they are a bully. And I think you saw when the UK said, we're going to reconsider letting Huawei in to their networks, China responded very strong. From Beijing, they threatened the HSBC, the British bank. The UK ambassador from China said, we're going to pull our investment in these infrastructure projects. And you saw what our response was. Secretary Pompeo said, we stand by our allies, particularly against bullies. And for the UK, whatever you need, we're there. And I think, the thing about a bully, and we've all had experiences with that, is bullies back down when they're confronted. And they really, really back down if they're confronted and you have your friends standing by your side. That's exactly what the United States is doing.
Yeah, I think we have to leave the conversation there, but we appreciate you joining us. Please come back, Undersecretary Keith Krach.
Thank you very much.